Hey, help support the show by becoming a member on Patreon or YouTube. This is the best way to help me as a creator, and so thank you and go Cavs.
This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. I'm Tony Pesta, joined by Jackson Flickinger. If you're watching, then you already know what happened. The Cleveland Cavaliers, their season has ended. We got an unbelievable amount of takes ready to fire off. I'm absolutely sure of it. Jackson, you were in the arena. You felt the disappointment in the crowd. What is your instant takeaway here from everything that just happened?
My instant takeaway is I want to say that as a collective podcast, we've had a lot of good takes this year. This has been a winning takes year. We took so many L's this series, it's not even funny. So I do want to acknowledge how many L's that we took. And do I apologize for the L's? Maybe. But I want to acknowledge them. I don't know if I apologize them.
You were more guilty.
I was more guilty, for sure.
I certainly played my role in it too.
And I'm out here on the court. Jarrett Allen has just walked by, maybe for the last time as a Cleveland Cavalier.
First appearance of the Junkyard Pod.
Just want to say, and there's this Indiana like sports anchor guy on like one of the local stations, and like he's gone through this take like 8 times. Like dude's not getting it right, but he like yells it every time. He's like, Tyrese Halliburton stuns the Cleveland crowd. He goes through like 5 times. And I'm like,
if only the Pacers themselves could have struggled through this game like that.
And I'm like, bro, I get it. Like, we don't need to keep going through this, man. Like, and you don't need to keep yelling. So they're just pouring salt in the wound at this point. The universe is just giving it to me from every direction. So I want to acknowledge that up front, that as bad as it is for the Cavs, it's bad for us in our integrity as basketball pundits, if we can even be called pundits after this series.
This is certainly the biggest L that the Junkyard Pod has taken since the Knicks series. But look, you know what? Everybody, I'm sure everyone tuned in to hear our retrospective on our podcasting opinions. Look, listen, maybe it's our fault for laughing after game 2, right? I know one of the comments
you could say that, yeah.
We're laughing and we're still laughing. But here's the thing. This is my opening monologue that I want to say right off the bat, all right? Everybody is understandably pissed off right now. Me and Jackson are laughing and joking. We're upset. We're sad. Listen, man, we were super invested into this team just like everyone else. The way that the season ended is undeniably an extreme disappointment. Whatever way you want to cook it up, right? We can talk about injuries. We can talk about whatever it may be. Losing in the second round for a 64-win team was completely disappointing. It was, to a degree, embarrassing. It was bad. So everyone's frustrated. Everyone's pissed off. The takes have been flying left and right. Many of them are very bad. I'm doing my best, and I know you're going to do your best to just call it how we see it, give our honest opinion. But I wanted to start off that opening monologue just by putting it all into perspective and saying, listen, to keep this, I know people don't want to hear this right now, and we're not going to spend the whole episode talking about this. This is why I want to get it out the way first. The reason why we're upset is because the Cavs won 64 games and just had, if not the best regular season in franchise history, the second best. Everything looked like it was falling into place for this team. They were so good in the regular season. They were so good in the first round. All of us, the Junkyard Pod included, were taking wins all over the place. This team looked like they took a huge step forward. They were going to be competing for a title. That's why we're all upset. That's why we're all frustrated. And I know people don't want to hear, oh, well, the team was so good in the regular season. We're going to get into how bad this series was. We're going to get into how disappointing it was. But I wanted to start off by saying that because, yeah, man, it's the worst way to go out. The only thing that could have been worse was losing in round 1, which was basically like almost impossible. But I had to start off by saying that because all the bad takes are flying. There's overreactions, and I understand. We get it. But before you type your angry comment, if you're a Cavs fan, understand that we're trying to look at this as level-headedly as possible. And if you're a Pacers fan, listen, man,
you have better things to do with your life.
Right. You got the dub. Whether it was injuries
under no circumstances.
It doesn't take anything away from you. You took the dub, man.
Yeah,
Just be happy about it. Why are you watching the
yeah.
opposing team podcast? You should be watching a preview for Knicks Pacers. All right. Anyways,
Watch
Jackson, pass it back to
watch
you.
Caitlin Cooper. She's great.
Exactly. There's great
Yeah,
Pacers creators. You don't have to watch the.
I mean, there's one great Pacers creator.
yeah.
I think.
There might be
there's,
more.
there's
I'm unfamiliar.
who could say? But what I do, you know what? Let's address the Pacers up top.
Yep.
Everybody afterwards addressed the Pacers. Even Ty Jerome, who is not a you got to hand it to them type of guy. He said the Pacers were the better team, and I think that there's no way to come out of this series and think that the Pacers weren't the best team. The Cavs were not the better team. Whether or not that should have been the case is that something we'll unpack for the next 5 months, as we don't have any basketball to watch. So I do want to give the Pacers credit for that. They pushed the Cavs in the right ways, and they had an unbelievably good three-point shooting series, while the Cavs had an unbelievably bad three-point shooting series. And I do think that plays a very large factor in this, and we're going to talk about whether or not what the Pacers did led to the Cavs' bad three-point shooting, but it is, for whatever reason, it happened, and that can't be denied. And that's why the Pacers won all these games. Even in the one game the Cavs did win, it wasn't because the Cavs shot well, it's because the Pacers shot bad as well. But like the Cavs shot under 30% 4 of the 5 games. They hit under 10 threes twice. For perspective, they'd had 0 back-to-back games during the regular season where they shot under 30%, and had 0 games where they shot made under 10 threes in a game. So when we talk about this series and why it ended up being like that, like, you got to talk about the shooting, and the shooting's not something that's fun to talk about. Kenny talked about how the Pacers did a good job of limiting catch and shoot threes, which is a thing. There was no drive and kick, so like the Pacers, you got to give them credit for that. But also at the same time, it's like Darius shot 3 of 2,058 in the 2 games he played, 3 games he played, whatever. Donovan did the same thing. Ty, he got some garbage time threes at the end of game 5. Not actually garbage time, but you know, like it's gonna make his series like a little better. But you know, he was awful from 3. The guys that they dared to shoot those pull-up threes just could not make a single one of them. So when we talk about the series, we have to acknowledge that up front. But the Pacers did a phenomenal job of doing everything else right, and they deserve credit for that. And that's also where any criticisms of the Cavs come from, because even though the Cavs did do some things well, the Pacers did more things well. So that's why they won.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely a credit to the Pacers. Like, listen, I think a lot of things went wrong for the Cavs. I think a handful of them were out of their control. But a lot of it was Indiana just taking advantage of who's in front of them, right? Like, all right, Cavs are hobbled. We're not going to let off the gas. We're going at you full force. Game 4, they absolutely destroyed us. They don't care that Darius is limping or whatever. And listen, we'll talk about it. We'll get more in depth into the different things that the Cavs did wrong on top of the injuries, because they didn't lose just because of the injuries. I want to get that out of the way too. It was a factor.
And he said as much.
Yeah, it was a factor, and we'll talk more about that later and how it actually impacted the Cavs. But the Pacers, they came away with this. They're the winners. They deserved it. They were the better team than who they played. I talked on the playback stream just to try and be as unbiased as possible. Like, listen, when the Cavs won in 2016, they absolutely benefited from Draymond getting suspended, from Bogut being hurt, from Curry not being 100%.
The thing about
away from the Cavs winning.
The thing about Draymond is he did that himself. We were looking at the consequences of our own actions.
Yeah. So, the point there is just that, I acknowledge that, but it doesn't make me the banner's still hanging up behind me. It doesn't take away any of that dub. That's just life in the NBA. And so the Pacers,
that one doesn't have a Mountain Dew sign on it though, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's not the official one. the Pacers, you should feel great about that dub. You're in the conference finals. You took care of business on both ends of the floor. You played a really great game, or a great series rather. Like we talk about, well, they shot the ball so incredible from three, and so you can interpret that as us saying it's a fluke, or you could interpret that as us saying like, hey man, that's really impressive that you've done it 2 years in a row now, shot way above your heads. At a certain point, you got to give the dudes credit. Like, yeah, is it an outlier from the regular season? Sure, but they've done it multiple times now. You tip your hat to them.
And they did it 4 games, 4 out of the 5 games here. They did that. So, like, that's where this isn't a one game. This isn't college where, like, oh, they just had one game where they were shooting well. It's like, yeah, they did. We thought they had the magnet ball game in game 1. Little did we know the magnet would not stop. So it was just going to continue the whole time. So we'll see if it travels to New York, but that's fine.
Yeah, they game 1 was a magnet ball. The rest of the series was pretty regular and sustainable for like an elite 3-point shooting team, which they are. It was the Cavs that just
they're not that elite. They're not that elite, man.
A good 3-point shooting team. Sorry, they're a very good 3-point shooting team. And it's not like surprising that they shot their numbers games 2 through 5 were not surprising to me. Game 1 was like a bit higher than 60%. You could expect.
And like game 4, well, like the first half, they shot like 70%. So you know, like
the Cavs also were just awful in that game. Like the defense is horrible.
Yes,
Game 1, I thought they actually played better defense and still got bombarded. Game 4, there was no contest on half of those shots. But anyways, the Cavs themselves, like, listen, let's really quick because later on in this episode we're going to talk.
We're done. Let's stop talking about the Pacers. We're done with the Pacers. The Pacers are done.
Later on, we'll talk about. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say we're going to talk later on about where the Cavs go from here, but I think we should talk about what went wrong in this series, what went wrong in Game 5 first.
What went wrong in Game 5? The Cavs couldn't hit any shots. Donovan Mitchell ran out of gas. Darius Garland ran out of gas. I don't think there's a whole lot to take from this game, honestly. They couldn't make any shots. They missed a million free throws. They generated clean looks. Donovan came out of the gates hot, but I don't know how this came through on TV, but after watching him in the arena for, I don't know, a million games this year and last year, like the first quarter, he was moving about like 80%, and 80% was good enough to get 13 first quarter points. And then by the time we got to second and third quarter, the guy was moving like 40%. Yeah, like he was finishing the game. He had no burst. Like I don't think I've seen Donovan Mitchell so hobbled in his career in Cleveland, and he left it all out there. So I just want to like hat tip, round of applause. Donovan Mitchell, I thought, was phenomenal, and I know he scored 35 he scored 35 points on 25 shots. The efficiency wasn't great, but I think if your conclusion from this game is something negative about Donovan Mitchell, I think that you probably shouldn't have any basketball takes. Which I shouldn't have any basketball takes either going forward, but like you definitely shouldn't. So I just wanted to give a shout out to him, and I wanted to briefly touch on his post game press conference because Donovan Mitchell is a very level-headed guy for the most part. I think you see this on the court. I think in his media interactions, he's very level-headed. That was the most mad I've seen him in my life, and he was so hobbled it took him he walked very gingerly up to the little post-game podium, and when he was up there, he delivered a couple rants talking about how this team's not going to get any benefit of the doubt going forward. He talked about how he's tired of losing in this round. Talked about the mental toughness being an issue, and then like on the way out, there's like a really heavy door because they don't want sound to come through. He slammed the door really hard, and he said, like, you guys are going to write so much bad shit about us going forward, and I'm going to use that as fuel. And he, like, said that, like, version of that, like, 2 or 3 times. So I just think that he left it all out there, talked about how he hated losing in this arena. He came out to the court after the game was over to just kind of walk out here and say that he was like shocked that the season was over and that he couldn't believe that they lost 3 games in this building and how much he loves the city. So I just want to start off at the top, just like, I'm glad that Donovan Mitchell's a Cleveland Cavalier. I think we all should be glad Donovan Mitchell's a Cleveland Cavalier. He laid it all out there. He emptied the clip. So, it's good to have Donovan Mitchell on our team, and he's right about everything. They're never going to get the benefit of the doubt again, and they don't deserve it, honestly.
Yeah, man. Listen, I think one of the most important breakthroughs of the season is Donovan Mitchell's growth as a leader. I think we saw it all throughout the year, and I think it was fully on display in the playoffs as well, all the way up until the post game press conference that you just mentioned, like saying all the right things and not saying it like from a PR standpoint, but just like it's the truth. Like he and that's what sucks about the way this season ended is that like they aren't going to get. No matter what they do next year, they won 64 games this year. They could win 64 next year. No one's going to take them serious. And I do have some general takes about, all that stuff, the regular season, everything. We'll get to that towards the end of the episode. But he's right. No one's going to take them serious. And as much as we can point fingers and say certain things like the injuries or whatever, the reality is they have no one to blame but themselves. They still were favored to win these games. I picked them to win this game specifically. I don't know if I had any faith that they could come back from down 3-1, but I picked them to at least win this game. I thought that Donovan Mitchell, as you said, left it all out on the floor. I have a few things that we could talk about in terms of how the offense was running throughout this game, but Donovan Mitchell, no doubt in my mind, gave everything he had left, whatever it was, even though he was clearly not moving anywhere near 100%. He had that play, I think the third quarter, he catches the ball with like 20 feet between him and Miles Turner, slows down. Clearly, he's not going to be able to dunk the ball. He knows that. Goes to lay it up, but he deaccelerates to the point where Turner gets back in the play and blocks him. And I'm like, this is a dude who just has nothing left. No more burst, no more explosiveness. And like you can say, hey, listen, we'll talk about mental toughness and all that when it comes to certain guys. Can't say that about Donovan Mitchell. Say whatever you want about the other guys. We can argue with that. Cannot argue that Donovan Mitchell doesn't have the urgency or the mental toughness. And when I see him deaccelerate to that degree with a wide open floor in front of him and get blocked, I'm like, something's not right with him. And he has given everything. Like I can rest assured that Donovan Mitchell gave everything that he had. And it resulted in, before the last two games, one of the best playoff runs we've seen from a Cavalier. We said after game 3 that Donovan Mitchell easily is the second best Cleveland Cavalier of all time now. I still stand by that. I'm happy that he's here. I anticipate that he'll be here for a while. I saw people ask me, like, do we think Mitchell's going to demand a trade? I can't speculate any of that, but like, I don't expect it.
I can. No, he's not going to. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. So. He was fantastic. He fully bought into this team. It's just, I do like that he left this feeling the way that I think we should all feel is that this wasn't a success of a season. And that feels like inexplicable to say with how good they were and how many genuine leaps they made.
It's not a successful season.
Way. Yeah, it's just not. It's adversity that they're going to have to grow through, and we'll see how they respond. But as far as Donovan Mitchell, again, I don't want to get too into the future talks yet because we do have to recap some of this series. But like just to get into like well, there's just some quick things that I want to say because I do think there were some mistakes made and
there were lots of mistakes made.
Yeah, I think it's more interesting when we talk about what went wrong here to talk about rather than like toughness or physicality or anything like that. There's stuff there that we can mention, but decision making. I said this on the stream and I stand by it. The Cavs were playing dumb basketball today. I truly think they played a dumb basketball game, especially on offense. They went 7 minutes without a field goal in the third quarter. And a lot of what we saw was both of the guards, Donovan Mitchell included, although I still, like, again, this isn't meant to hate on him. There was a lot of dribbling the ball for 10 seconds and taking a pull-up mid-range jumper, or a lot of possessions where there was one pass made or no pass made, rush shot attempts, bad shot attempts, heliocentric offense. The offense that we saw in this game did not resemble anything from what we saw in the regular season from this team. They completely abandoned their identity. Evan Mobley barely touched the ball, which you could say was something that we saw throughout the regular season too, but they completely abandoned their identity of the ball moving around, multiple actions. It took them, oftentimes I was pointing out throughout the game, they're starting their first action with 13 seconds on the clock, 14 seconds on the clock. So they're struggling to get the ball up the court against full court pressure. There was a lot of things that the Cavs did wrong. I thought Kenny Atkinson's substitutions in this game were something that I kind of got annoyed with. And I think Kenny was overall solid enough as a coach in this series. Like he got out coached, but I don't think it was a true disaster class. But two things on the rotations. One, let me see how many minutes he finished with real quick. But DeAndre Hunter, well, there's two guys, but the DeAndre
30.
Hunter finished with 30 minutes. I think he only had 19 entering the fourth quarter. He may have played 11 or 10 minutes in the fourth quarter. With the way that the offense was struggling and how no one else could score or dribble the ball, I feel like this is a game where DeAndre Hunter probably should have played 40 minutes rather than giving 19 to Dean Wade and 16 to Okoro. And then Ty Jerome.
Yes.
I've been very negative about Ty Jerome on this broadcast, in this series at least. I'll say I was very positive about him before that. But I was genuinely confused as to why they wouldn't give him his regular, at least a burst in the first half, at least give him his first stint. Because it felt like, and especially by the third quarter, no matter how bad Ty Jerome has been in this series, to a degree, if you're going to lose, you want to lose with the guys who got you to where you are. And I know Ty Jerome was horrendous in games 1 through 4, basically. He had a really, really rough series. But to just punt on this guy who was a 6th Man of the Year candidate, who consistently stepped up when Mitchell and Garland were struggling, to watch Mitchell and Garland, as hobbled as they were in this game, and not give Ty Jerome a chance to dig you out of it, and instead rely on Isaac Okoro, who everyone knows I'm a huge Okoro fan. And Okoro first a couple minutes, he was like solid first couple minutes, but it just increasingly got to the point where I'm like, how the hell is Ty Jerome not on the court right now? They so desperately need anybody who could dribble the ball or potentially create their own shots. And when he finally came in the game, he had 2 straight threes and hit a floater shortly after that. And he made some boneheaded decisions later on. But like, I think Kenny kind of galaxy brained the Ty Jerome thing. I think you go down swinging with the guys who got you there. And I understand how bad he was. But to not even give him a stint in the first half, I thought was a mistake.
I'm going to defend Kenny a little bit, which is really odd because I'm a huge Ty Jerome guy, obviously. But I think that when you are at this point in the series where you're grasping at straws, you've already lost. But I understand why you went with Okoro and Wade, because you needed somebody to actually have some physicality at the point of attack. And I do want to talk about physicality because I think it was the one deciding factor in the series besides 3-point shooting. And I do want to clarify when I talk about physicality, what that means and where I think the Cavs really lacked toughness. I don't think the Cavs lacked toughness in the sense that they should have been hitting Halliburton out of the air when he's going up for layups, or they should have been taking cheap fouls. That's not toughness. That's excessive play. That's over the line. That's not what wins you games. But what does win you games, and this is what Kenny has talked about, what Kenny says is playing with toughness is winning your spot, getting to your spot on the floor. And that's consistently what the Cavs weren't doing. The Cavs were not getting to their spots on the floor. Jarrett Allen pushed off of his spots repeatedly. Everybody, like, that's where picking it up full court, when you talked about the bad decisions, the Cavs were consistently bringing the ball up the court, crossing the timeline with about 16 seconds on the shot clock. Usually, if things are going right for the Cavs, they are onto their second action with 16 seconds on the shot clock, or they've already had a shot up. So that's when you look at this game, it has 10 assists for the Cavs. Things like that, not being able to physically get to your spot on the other side of the court quick enough, not being able to create separation for the guards with either screens or a wide variety of things. Those were the issues that continually popped up. That's why things got out of hand in Game 4. It wasn't because Benedict Mathurin took cheap shots at DeAndre Hunter and he responded. Like, DeAndre Hunter responded in a way that toughness says you're supposed to, but that's not what the Cavs needed. What the Cavs needed is the Cavs needed somebody to, like, set a screen, create space. Every time Dean Wade sets a screen, he's slipping, like, every screen. Every time Evan Mobley sets a screen, he's slipping his screen. Every time Jarrett Allen, first quarter, he set like 4 or 5 like A-plus screens that got open looks for Darius, Garland, Donovan Mitchell. And then after the first quarter, he said, yeah, like that, the speech that Kenny gave at the start of the game, it has worn off. So I'm just going to go back to like not really making contact on these screens, just kind of like setting it and just kind of like gliding out of the way. And like, those are the things that are major issues with this team. And if they do not get fixed, you're going to keep having these issues where you run into them in the second round. Because Donovan Mitchell, he is a physically imposing guy in the sense that he can get to his spots. You're not bullying Donovan Mitchell. You see him continually get downhill. But you know why he keeps getting hurt? It's because he's 6'2", and you can't go to the line. You can't go to the rim 30 times a game at 6'2" and do that 7 times within 14 days in a series and expect to come out of it on the other side okay. Like, you need some help. You can't be the only one doing that. And Darius Garland is very good. And I don't want to really pile on to him this series because he was moving at like 20%. So like, I don't want to pile on too much, but I think we can say he's not a physically imposing guy. Evan Mobley is a super skilled player, very good player. He's not a physically imposing guy. I think that you can win with Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley as not physically imposing guys, or sorry,
I get what you're trying to say.
Darius and Evan as not physically imposing guys. I think you can still win that way. But what you can't do is you can't win with everybody else who are not your star players not being physically imposing. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, maybe the least physically imposing players of all time. Like, I'm overstating that, obviously, but you think about who was around Steph Curry and Klay Thompson that gave them so much room. You know why you couldn't pick up Steph Curry full court? Because if you pick up Steph Curry full court, Andrew Bogut's standing right behind you, delivering the most bone-crushing legal or illegal screen that you could possibly imagine. Like, there's that clip of, like, not my favorite clip, but that clip of, like, where they're, the clip I'm talking about with, like, Amon Shumpert and Dre, the Draymond and Bogut, they're all setting these, like, horrendous moving screens, and like Shumpert's just getting like bodied, and like Deli's just like flying like comically away, and it's like, that's what's happening because you got dudes that are setting A+ screens. They're not setting a screen thinking about getting to the other spot. They're setting a screen saying, I'm going to hit this guy and create space for my guards. And that's what the Cavs need. The Cavs need to be able to respond to the physicality where it's like, you want to pressure us full court, you could be laying on your own 3-point line because so-and-so set a hard screen for you. You can't have Max Strus, who's 6'5", and not a physically imposing guy, being your best screen setter because he's not going to do any harm in that way or like create any space. So like, those are the areas where I think the Cavs need to overhaul their roster so that they can take that physicality. So like, that's what I think is really important when we talk about that. You can't get punked by Miles Turner. Mitchell Robinson punking you, Isaiah Hartenstein punking you. That kind of makes sense because that's kind of who they are as players. But Miles Turner, that's not who Miles Turner is. That's not who Obi Toppin is. You can't allow that to happen.
Yeah, and when we talk about the physicality, we talk about the physicality. I do think this is the part of the conversation that frustrates me the most. And like what you said is valid. Where I get so annoyed and frustrated is when people pretend that like what we just saw was the Cavs getting pushed around, like, oh, they need to knock someone down, or like whatever you said at the start, right? Like, the Cavs didn't lose because they weren't starting fights or pushing guys back or like they were getting beat up on the glass like 2023. That's not how they were losing. Where the physicality actually showed itself was, again, like you were mentioning, something that we have talked about a lot, screen setting. Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley have never been good at setting screens. It's always been a limitation. I think Evan Mobley, not talking about screen setting for a second, has improved quite a lot in terms of using his body offensively and even defensively, but screen setting is still something that he just doesn't do very well. Jarrett Allen has never been a great screen setter. I think it's part of maybe a lower body issue. I just don't know if he has the strength to really set him, but I also don't think that they try to stay and like how many times we see them slip or move before the contact is made, like you were mentioning. And so that is a much more interesting and constructive thing to talk about rather than, what you see a lot on Twitter of just like, oh, they're so soft. They're not, why aren't they fighting back? It's like, that's not the issue. And
Dylan Brooks has never won a playoff series ever in his life. He fights in every single playoff series. Like Deshaun Stevenson, those aren't the guys he tried to fight LeBron. The Mavericks one, but that wasn't because of Deshaun Stevenson. So Lance Stevenson too.
Well, yeah, there's a there's a lot.
There's a list of
It's
guys.
just
Like that's not what wins.
it's such a dumb narrative, and like it's not, the Cavs wouldn't have won this series just by setting harder screens and stuff, but it's still important. It's still important, and I was going somewhere with this, and now I'm forgetting. I had another
So
point, but now I
sorry.
can't think of it. No, it's okay. I think well, I'll take
I
it the other way. I was going to somehow bridge this a
oh
little smoother, but to get to the other point, I was going to say, so you talk about like the full court pressure being an issue. Part of it for sure is the lack of screens. I agree with you there. I'm not, what I'm about to say isn't meant to
mhm.
disagree. I'm just adding on to it. I also think that because of the injury to Darius Garland, because of
Yes.
Donovan Mitchell now having to carry a heavier load, because Ty Jerome was so horrendous and he can't break a full court press anyways for whatever reason. The dude just can't. Even in this game,
He's
he almost got an 8-second violation
he's not
because of,
he's not a big guy. He's a small.
yeah.
He's not physically imposing, and he's not fast. Honestly,
Mm.
so those are two
And
things.
with all that adding up, you have these multiple plays where Okoro's bringing the ball up the floor, or Darius just doesn't have the speed or mobility to get around his guys. And that's where, on top of the lack of solid screen setting, you're getting into your possessions with 15 seconds on the clock, 16 seconds on the clock, and everything from there is just. And on top of that, again, just to give the Pacers credit, for the Cavs, it's a slog fest just getting up the court, and then they miss a wide open three, and now the Pacers are running down the other court, and it's like they wore you down so expertly. And I'm obviously being reductive, saying like all that Cavs missed open three, but like you get what I'm saying. The Cavs, everything felt like they were trucking through the mud, and the Pacers just relentlessly continued to pressure them, continued to get out and run, play at a fast tempo pace, and the Cavs just, they didn't have the manpower to keep up with it, and they didn't respond to the physicality in a way that you would have needed to overcome everything else that was going wrong, the three-point shooting, the injuries, the lack of ball movement. Like if you were looking at a way in which the Cavs were still going to win this series, a big part of it would have been overcoming that specific issue, something as small as setting stronger screens, giving those guys more separation. It truly does matter.
And I think that when we talk about, and I tried to pull this out of Rick Carlisle pregame, but he shut me down, which Rick has been shutting me down a lot. And I do want to say Rick has shut me down like 10 times this series every time I try to ask him a question. I really enjoy Rick Carlisle, his press conferences. I think he's a very good coach. So I wanted to just give a quick shout out to our guy Rick Carlisle, not our guy, their guy Rick Carlisle. But I do think I tried to pull this out of him, that the physicality that they played with, I believe that's what led to some of the threes not going down. I don't want to say the Cavs had tired legs because they are well conditioned athletes, and I don't think that they weren't conditioned for the series. But I do think that there is a toll. Like when things are harder, everything becomes harder. Like I don't know if I'm saying this too well, but like when bringing the ball up the court is harder, running your offense becomes a little harder too because you have less time to do it. You've already extended energy to get to a spot where you're usually able to just run too quickly. And then at that point, everything else becomes harder. And then when you get the shot, it's almost like a relief or like a pressure. You're like, well, we worked so hard for this that like it just has a cumulative effect. And as it
Yeah.
keeps accumulating, I think that's why the Cavs were never able to break out of it. I didn't think today they were going to break out of their 3-point shooting slump. I thought they were going to break out of it like the rest of the series, but coming into today, I had the realization that like they're not going to break out of this slump today because that physicality, that how much effort they have to extend to get to their spots is just too much for them to overcome. And we saw that today, even at the free throw line, one of their worst free throw shooting games of the season. They also had like a million like little push shots right around the rim that they missed. I think those all come together.
Yeah. Yeah. It all adds up. Like you said, it's a cumulative effect. The Pacers made them work for every little thing, and that all added up, and the Cavs weren't able to overcome it. I want to go rapid fire on a couple more things from this game and maybe the series in general, and then we can talk about where the Cavs go from here.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big things that kind of ties into both of those factors, Evan Mobley had 24 points tonight, 8 of 12 shooting, played 37 minutes. They had to get it. They had to find a way to get him the damn ball. Like, it's that simple. It's something that we talked about all season long. They had to find a way to get him the ball. He was one of the only, consistent positives in the offense. And I will say, second half, handful of plays where they did get him the ball. Nesmith switched onto him and he passes it back out. And I will say, yes, Evan Mobley should be able to beat up that mismatch, but Nesmith is also a very strong, burly dude. Even though he's shorter, that lower center of gravity, like it's not as obvious as a mismatch as it might seem. Still, regardless, the Cavs had to find a way to get him the ball, get him more involved. That's something they're going to have to do moving forward. If Evan Mobley truly is the player who we all think he is, and I think he has shown to be.
I think he is.
And part of that, again, trickles down into it's taking them forever to get the ball up the court. They don't have the burst or the speed to actually get downhill, draw a help defender, and then give Evan Mobley the ball. And you don't want to just boil down every possession to Evan Mobley catching it at the elbow and spacing when the Cavs aren't making anything because the defense is just collapsing. So there's a lot of things that trickle down into that. But regardless, the Cavs had to find a way to get him the ball more often, and I think they failed to do that.
Yeah, I think that there's also, the trickle-down effect. And also, I think some of the lineups that we talked about, I think he went away most in the second quarter. I think the second quarter, that's where you saw the most Wade and Okoro minutes. And Wade and Okoro did not want to touch the ball today. You saw the floor just shrank so much when they were on it. Like Indiana, they're basically like both of their defenders have like 1 foot in the paint the whole time. So that makes it so much harder to get a player like Mobley involved when you have people helping to that degree. So I do think that, yes, you'd like to get Mobley involved, but I think that there wasn't like an effort like Darius and Donovan were sitting on the sideline like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we didn't get Evan the ball? So like I think there's reasons why things like this happen. So there's Donovan just walked by right there.
Well, there you go. Yeah, ask him if he intentionally wanted to pick on Mobley. No, that's a good thing though. Like, I know most people already know this, but it is still like a silly take that you see on Twitter. Why isn't Kenny Atkinson telling them to give the ball to Mobley? He probably is. He's probably not telling them to run step back three or pull up mid range every time. But the thing is, the Cavs they clearly had plays that were designed to get Mobley involved. And when they were running those, it looked good, especially the first quarter. Second half, I think a couple times they ran those plays and Evan Mobley just shied away from the moment. And I also think throughout basketball, there's a great deal of freelance going on. It is a very freestyle, open to making a read on any given play type of situation. And the guards, the Cavs in general, just didn't really find or look for Evan Mobley. And some of that is his own. He needs to be more assertive and ask for the ball. And some of it is they have to keep looking for him.
I do want to stop here real quick and just acknowledge how far Evan Mobley has come this season. Where last year we were coming out of that Celtics series, we were like so impressed because he took like 8 shots in a game. You know what I mean? Like when they were down so many people and Marcus Morris was getting like 30 minutes a game. So I do want to acknowledge maybe. So I do want to acknowledge just how far he's come. And now after Donovan had made his cameo, there's Danny Cunningham making his cameo too.
So many cameos.
So many cameos. It's like it's like the season finale. You got to cram in all the side characters. Oh, look, Spider-Man's here. Anyways, I like Evans comes so far this season as an offensive hub and as somebody who can hit 3-pointers. Like how many times today did you think, please swing the ball to Evans so he can have an open 3? Like imagine saying that to yourself last year. Like he's come so far, and I asked him, after the season, in his last press conference, like, what are you most proud of? He said, I'm proud of the way he's worked as an offensive player, how he's become more of a ball handler, how he's become more of a offensive hub and a shooter. And he says that's what he's going to work on again to try to get even better at that. And I think that he came so far this year, and I think it's easy to overlook that with how bad things ended, but he came so far, and I'm excited to see how much further he can take it next year.
I agree entirely with that, and I'm going to get back to that in 1 second. The last things I want to say on this game, just I think honestly this is my last point. I'll make 2 points. Jarrett Allen, listen, 9 points, 4 rebounds.
We'll talk about Jarrett Allen because that's a big part of the future convo. So let's. We'll
have one quick point on him in the game, and then we'll move into that. Jarrett Allen is someone who, when everything around him isn't going great, he very rarely will step up and be the guy who steadies the ship. It's just not the type of player he is. We've talked about him all really his entire time in Cleveland. He can be the unsung hero when he's doing his job. You don't even really notice him. When he's not doing his job, you notice it. He was great in the first quarter, started to disappear as the Cavs in general started to disappear. And that's basically, we'll talk more about him later. Max Strus, 0 for 9 tonight. Listen, he was legitimately great in games 1 and 2 and 3. He was so helpful. Went 0 of 9 in the elimination game. You can kill him for that if you want, but the dude was incredible in the other games. Like it's tough blow. Him picking up 3 quick fouls in this game definitely hurt the Cavs offense. He only finished with 26 minutes. This was a game where you really could have used more from Strus, but overall, I mean, listen, the dude, he took good shots. I think there was only 1 3-pointer where I was like, that's a little, I'm not sure if we needed that, but I thought Strus, the process for him was fine today. And I think overall, he's a very helpful role player, and he showed that in the series despite the stinker in the final game.
I think that a big thing that the Pacers found, I think like at the end of game 3, they found it, and then they just abused it, is Pascal Siakam, after I called him out, so you're welcome, Pacers fans, said, I'm just going to take Max Strus in the post on repeat. And one of the problems when you have a point guard who is undersized and is missing a toe, and then you have your 6'2" shooting guard who only has one leg, is that you're going to have to do a lot of like help and recovery and rotations and stuff. And you can only over rotate so much. You can't help on Max Strus and Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. And they just abused Max Strus in the post with Pascal Siakam. Just continually posting him up. It was an auto 2 points, which I don't blame Max Strus for. I think that's a Kenny Atkinson problem. I thought that was why I thought that they were going to go with DeAndre Hunter in the starting lineup, but Kenny didn't see things that way. And if we are talking about issues with Kenny Atkinson, I would say play your 5 best players. Like, try that out, especially when, the season's on the line. So that's something that I would file both of those things under Kenny Atkinson complaints from this game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there was a point where he probably should have shortened the rotation and played his best players together more often, for sure. And just in general, play Hunter with those guys, because we didn't see it all regular season.
During the season, like 12 minutes or something like that. 12 minutes.
We were talking about it the whole time, right? Like, this is such an obvious fit. And I guess we'll see.
They outsmarted themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess we'll see what type of adjustment is made, assuming that Hunter is back in Cleveland. I don't see why he wouldn't be. But we might as well move forward and talk about what comes next. And I wanted to build off the Mobley point where you were mentioning, where like, yes, this was a huge step forward for Mobley. And I think both things can be true, what I'm about to say. I think undeniably the Cavs improved in many important ways this year, and the season ended in a total collapse that was embarrassing, and they'll have no benefit of the doubt moving forward, and they'll have to prove it all over again. I think both of those things are true. If you told us before the season Darius Garland would return to being an all-star, Mobley would be the defensive player of the year and an all-NBA player because of his offensive leap, Mitchell would have improved as a leader the way that he did, you could go down the list. We would have said, that's amazing, that's awesome. All that ends in a second-round exit. That's obviously, like I said at the start, about as bad as it could have possibly been. So I think both things are true. I want to enter this discussion with a level-headed discussion, because I know people have said you got to trade Donovan Mitchell and get your assets back while you can. That's ridiculous. I've seen people pin it entirely.
Dumbest thing ever.
Absolutely. Like, I'm sorry to anybody who said that, like, because I'm not trying to just pick on people who are frustrated and getting their takes off, but like, you're not trading Donovan Mitchell after this. You're not, like, a lot of people are piling on Darius Garland. The dude was limping. All right. Like, I don't think this proves to me that Darius Garland is a playoff sinker, that he can't be an effective player in a playoff setting. Dude was playing on one foot. Like, there's certain takes that I want to just throw in the trash, but there's real conversations that we could have. And I think that's what we're going to do here.
I saw Rich Paul in the bathroom today, so shout out to Rich Paul for being here. Didn't make a cameo on the pod. So on one thing that I think is a really important point that we can take away from this season is last year at this time, we were saying, can Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland play together? Rich Paul may or may not have asked for a trade, or at least hinted at that. Who could say? I mean, I don't know. Anything can happen. It's the NBA. But
Mm.
I think that this year showed us without a doubt that the Cavaliers are better with both Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. I think that Kenny Atkinson has got them to a point where they are better with each other than they are apart, and that's something that I don't think we were saying was a very hard thing to do, considering how their playing styles really clashed the 2 years under JB. So I I would reject basically anything that says we need to break up Donovan and Darius Garland, unless you were like trading Darius Garland for like a clear better player or something like that. So I wanted to get that out of the way, where I think that you can win with Donovan and Darius, and obviously Evan Mobley will be a bona fide superstar in this league. So you do not want to trade a bona fide superstar. So I wanted to kind of frame it with that.
Yeah. And I agree with that. Like I know where we're going to disagree already. We'll get to there in just a second. I know that you're a little more willing to trade Jarrett.
Gotta get rid of.
This is where we've
Gotta
always
get him out. Gotta get him.
Yeah. Well, before we get to that,
Jarrett.
though, before we
I
get
love
to
cats.
that,
I have 2 cats.
I know that's where the disagreement will be. So I want to focus first on what you just said. Those other 3 guys, Darius, Donovan, and Evan, we agree completely. I don't think that splitting up Donovan and Darius is the right decision. I know people will talk about to the end of time that they're a liability on defense. Listen, until they lose a series because of Darius and Donovan's defense, I'm not gonna worry about that right now. They didn't lose because of Darius and Donovan defensively. That's just not why they lost. Now, is it going to be a weakness that teams exploit? Sure, but we can cross the road when we get there. The point is that you mentioned Darius and Donovan this season both complemented each other to perfection. All of the issues that you might find in Darius's game were patched up by Donovan Mitchell at his best. Vice versa. We saw Darius Garland closing games in the regular season. And I guess I want to say this real quick, just one straight point, and then we'll talk about Jarrett Allen. I think in general, the NBA and fans and media, I think we've gone a little bit overboard on the regular season doesn't matter thing, and this certainly doesn't help the case.
Certainly not a good time to bring this
but there's a reason why I'm bringing it up. Okay, is because everyone's saying the Cavs, they're frauds, they're regular season merchants, and like, listen, I understand why you would think that, because the last 10 years we have spent NBA narrative in general has reflected that, but the reality is every single NBA champion was really good in the regular season. There is no world in which you are upset that your team won 64 games. There is no such thing as being a fraudulent 64-win team. And I know that we just went out in the second round in 5 games. I get it. I understand. But even the comparison to the 60-win Atlanta Hawks, they went to the conference finals. I've always said this. This is a consistent take.
And the Cavs were like really beat up when they beat them too. So like, I mean, who was the best player on the Cavs then?
Yeah, I don't know how they blew that series, But the point that I was getting to is that I've been consistent with this. This isn't a copium Cavs just lost take. I've always said that I think using the Hawks as like this picture of like being a fraudulent regular season team was always a bit unfair or disrespectful, because the reality is they were a really great, fun 60-win team that went to the conference finals and lost to LeBron James. The broader point that I'm getting at is that throwing away everything that the Cavs accomplished in the regular season, whether it be the Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell pairing or the Evan Mobley leap or whatever else it might be, I think would be a knee-jerk overreaction. We can't just pretend that didn't happen. It didn't happen on accident. And yes, they completely collapsed in the playoffs, but the general idea that the regular season just doesn't matter, like certain things don't matter, right? Your individual, the matchups you played against other teams the regular season don't translate to the playoffs. We've seen that over and over and over again in NBA history. The Knicks just got swept by the Celtics in the regular season. They're about to kick them out in 5. This happens. Those things you can throw away. Certain 1 month sample sizes you can throw away, but the totality of who you are in the regular season does matter. And that's why when we're about to broach this conversation of what comes next, I'm not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater or whatever the stupid saying is, right? Like, there is something here. You don't win 64 games on accident. I know that's not what people want to hear, but I'm entering this conversation.
I agree with
that framing.
So what I will say in terms of Jarrett Allen, because I think the Cavs should trade Jarrett Allen. You think the Cavs shouldn't? We'll get that out of the way now. what I will say is that overlapping skill sets, I think, are super, super helpful in the regular season and not very helpful in the playoffs. And I think that is something that where Jared Allen is so helpful for Evan Mobley in the regular season, takes a lot of pressure off of him. You're always running lineups with two elite centers. You're always able to, one goes out, another one slides in. You're able to really shift how you're playing style depending on the day and depending on what you need. Like, is this a game where we're behind? We can close without Jared Allen. Oh, this is a game we are ahead. We can close with both of them. So like it gives you a lot of optionality and a lot of versatility and a lot of overlapping skills, and all of those things are so incredibly helpful in the regular season, and that's why that pairing was phenomenal in the regular season. And I think that when we get to the playoffs, those overlapping skill sets are more of an issue. And I think they are overlapping skill sets, even though one is now a shooter, one is now an offensive hub, while the other is more of a traditional center. I think that the Cavs still need a traditional center. I just think they need a traditional center that's not Jared Allen. So I think that what Evan Mobley needs somebody, if you're going to pair him with a center, he needs to be paired with a center that does things that Evan Mobley cannot do. And right now, I don't think there's one skill besides maybe like a lob finisher that Jared Allen does at a level that I would confidently say it's better than Evan Mobley. Like he's a slightly better screen setter. He's a slightly better lob finisher, but I don't think there's anything else that he's better than at with Evan Mobley, and I think that's more of the issue as opposed to anything else. And then you also get into the ramifications of, well, the Cavs have very limited guys that they could move because they will be a second apron team. They cannot combine salaries. So you can't say, we're going to trade George Niang and Karis LeVert for a larger contract in DeAndre Hunter. That's not an option anymore. So that means that the guys, you have to trade one for one. So that would mean that realistically, the guys that you could trade are DeAndre Hunter and Jared Allen. So I think that when we're approaching a offseason move conversation, or I guess Max Strus, just from a salary perspective, when we're approaching the offseason, and Isaac Okoro, but it's hard because you can't combine Isaac Okoro with somebody else. So when you're approaching it from that perspective, Jared Allen is the best asset that the Cavs have. He's the one who is most expendable in the sense of in a playoff series, he's not giving you something that nobody else can give you, and the redundancy is not very useful in this context. It was useful in game 2. So like it's not like it's unuseful in all contexts, but there are much limited more contexts that it's useful. And I think that if you had like, I'm not even suggesting this trade, but if you had Zubac on the Cavs instead of Jared Allen, and I think they're both comparably the same skill level of a center, would you agree with that? I
Zubac
think that
is better, I think Zubac is a
all
better
right,
center.
Zubac is better, but
they're not. The gap's not like
they're in the same realm. So like
yeah.
I think that if you had a Zubac center who would give you a lot of different skills than Evan Mobley, like you would be considerably better at some of the things that Evan Mobley struggles with, I think that you would be in a better place. Also, I think you could be in a better place if maybe you like double down on some of your other areas, like your other weaknesses, and I think that's where trading Jared Allen would be a avenue or something that I would explore. And I think that if you were going to make a move, I think that is what you would look for. Is he's somebody who we can move? Maybe Isaac Okoro and a pick is somebody we can move just because of the salary. So those are the areas that I would look to explore. But again, it's hard to do that just because they're a second apron team and you don't have a mid-level exception. So you can't really, you're not bringing in a Max Strus basically for free.
Yeah. And so I will say I agree with basically everything you said. Certain things like the severity of the redundancy and everything, I think we disagree just slightly on, but the broad point that you made, I agree. And I think it's entirely reasonable for anybody who's looking at the Cavs and saying, We feel like we need to make a move. Jarrett Allen is the most expendable member of the core four. I agree with that entirely. The other three would almost be a non-starter with me when you're talking trade discussions. Garland would be the next one, but like I think we agree. Those three are pretty safe. I am not suggesting that the Cavs have to have all four completely off limits, hang up the phone as soon as they mention Jarrett Allen. I don't think anyone's suggesting that. So I just want to make my point clear to the people watching, not to you. I know you know that, but the difficult part is this, and you already mentioned it, with the second apron limitations, with the fact that I think Jarrett Allen's only making $20 million a year. The question to me has always been, do you make a move that meaningfully raises your ceiling? And if that move arises and I see it, I will sign off on it right now. And we can look at what players would be available in another pod, right? Like we can get into the details of that, but that's my general immediate reaction is, do the Cavs meaningfully get better? If they don't, then I don't see the point in making the move. And one thing that I want to say, right, because this is basically my justification for why I would keep the core four together. And maybe you could talk about moving Okoro or Wade or some small move on the margins. But the core group of, I would say, starting five, Jerome and Hunter, who, hey, at least Ty Jerome made himself more affordable, right? We'll see. Maybe he still goes somewhere else. Maybe he's pissed Kenny didn't play him or something. But
I think that Jerome has probably cost himself a move elsewhere.
A lot of money. Yeah.
So I don't think Detroit is saying, hey, he's our missing playoff piece. So I think that Ty Jerome's going to stay.
Yeah. And so with that group of 7 players right there, I feel pretty reasonable and confident saying that NBA is unpredictable, but let's say 3 to 5 years of that group, moderate health luck. I feel pretty confident saying that group wins 50 to 60 games every year, is within, the top 3 seeds of the Eastern Conference every year, would reasonably feel like if they got hot at the right time and everything broke their way, they could make a run at the finals at the very least.
Yes.
There are much worse scenarios for a team to be in. So I know we're all feeling like doomsday is upon us and they need to blow this up and retool, but it is very difficult to be in the position that they are. And there's no reason to nuke that. I'm not saying trading Jarrett Allen's nuking that. I'm just talking the general discourse. To me, keeping this core, banking on the stability, you can look at someone in the playback chat said this, and I just think it's worth mentioning. Oh, only in Cleveland would this happen. This only happens to us. Look at the previous NBA champions. They all went through some type of adversity. They all went through some embarrassing loss. And maybe the Cavs never overcome it. Maybe they never break through and win a championship. It's completely possible. And the part of this discussion that's like, it's not frustrating, but it's just like, it almost makes it feel pointless sometimes. It's like, no matter which way the Cavs go, they could do everything right, and they still might never win a championship. Maybe they keep Jarrett Allen, and that's the best path, but they never win a championship. Maybe they trade him, and that was actually the best path, but they never win a championship. We're never going to be able to prove who was right or wrong in this. That's just sports. Right. It's unpredictable. But for me, what I know is that this team has proven to me that they can win a lot of games in the regular season and meaningfully give me a meaningful reason to believe that they can make a title run if things break the right way. And so for me, again, like keeping that core together, banking on the stability, the continuity, that's where I'm leaning. But I fully understand why someone would think that moving off of Jarrett Allen is the move. And if the correct move becomes available, if a move that I think would raise their ceiling becomes available, then I'd be into it. But the second apron stuff makes it a limitation. And the last thing I'll say, and I'll pass it back to you. We talked about this all the time over the last 2 years, really the last 3 years. It's so hard to win a championship without a top 5 player on your team. There's so many extra variables. You're really banking on your depth and your core nucleus of 4 guys who are top 30, 50, whatever you may say. Looking at this Cavs core 4, if you were to break them up, you'd have to convince me that you are either making another core 4 that is as strong or stronger, or you're getting a big 3 that features one of those, another top 10 player. And if that move's not available, that's where I get nervous and think, are we making a parallel move, or are we making, one of the decisions, like if you look at Milwaukee, Phoenix, or any of these other teams that kind of suffered a bad playoff loss, then nuked their core and immediately suffered the results of it. That's what I would that's what I'm hesitant to falter into. I don't want to fall into that. So that's where my hesitancy comes from. It's not just
I think
Cavs
that's
bias or anything. I
no.
think they're on the edge of a cliff when they start discussing big moves like that.
So I think one of the trends that we've seen, and I would push back a little bit with like your top 5 player thing, because I think one of the trends that has shown through pretty clearly after a series where the Cavs, I think they had the 2 best players in the series. I'm not a Halliburton guy, but I think that reasonable people could think that coming into the series, Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley were the 2 best players. Evan Mobley and Tyrese Halliburton are probably, you know what I mean. But like the Cavs, I think fully healthy, they have 4 out of the 6 top players in the series. But what really made the difference here, and we saw this because in Game 4, Tyrese Halliburton didn't really play well. He was phenomenal tonight, but he didn't really play well in Game 4. And the Pacers won by 97 points, approximately. So, and they won by that much because they were better 3 through like 10, you know. So I think that depth has never been more important, and I feel like we're going to get to a point where with the second apron and everything, depth is going to be considerably more important. So I wouldn't trade Jarrett Allen, which is something that you can't do. Actually, you can do this. You can't do it the other way. I wouldn't trade him for like, I wouldn't try to get like a home run, like consolidation, like let's trade 2 guys to get a bigger guy. They can't do that anyway, but I wouldn't do that. What I would do is explore options where you are getting less overlapping skills. Because I think that's what's really going to show through is that when you look at the Pacers, I feel like they have a really well balanced team in the sense that like Tyrese Halliburton gives you something completely different than what Pascal Siakam gives you, and Miles Turner gives you something completely different than what Pascal Siakam does. And you can just go down the list. Benedict Mathurin gives you something way different than your other guards. Nembhard and Nesmith, they're also very different. So it's like, I think that those overlapping skills is something that the Cavs sort of miss. And you see that with like, we have numerous 3-point specialists, but when the 3-point specialists aren't hitting, what other role player skills do you have? When your starters, when it's not a series for Jarrett Allen, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just there are holes there that I think show through a lot more in a short series. And I think that's the issue that I would raise. But I'm not saying like trade Jarrett Allen to trade Jarrett Allen. That would be wrong. But I would overturn every rock and see if I could find a situation where you were getting a different skill in that is not something that the other members of the team have.
Yeah. And I do agree with you. I think it's worth exploring every option. I think to be clear, I think you and me agree much more than we disagree on this topic, where
We do.
strongly disagree with, and I think you agree, is with some of the overreactions that you see on Twitter. But that's why you shouldn't look at Twitter or the Playback chat, which was also the YouTube chat. Man, there were some crazy takes dropped. We won't even get into that. But yeah,
well, they deserve to be dropped.
Yeah,
after this,
exactly.
the Cavs did nothing.
Yeah, that's why there's nothing. There's nothing for me to spend my time focusing on here. It's like, yeah, at the end of the day, they got to prove it, and they didn't do it this year. They didn't do it the year before. There's reasons and things that you can point to that I think make you believe that like it's not worth blowing this up. And again, like I said, being a 50 to 60 win team and feeling like if things broke the right way, because like this is the pure copium take that I'm going to drop right now. I've already said in the group chat before. I stand by it. Fully, if the Cavs were as healthy as they were in games 1 and 2 against Miami, they win this series. They beat New York. Maybe they lose in the finals to whoever comes out the West, but I firmly stand on that. I will die on that hill. I will stand 10 toes down. If the Cavs were as healthy as they were to start the playoffs, they beat Indiana, but that's not how the NBA works. It's not how basketball works. The Pacers beat the team that was in front of them. They were handily the better team, even though they were still not even the favorites to win. So like, credit to Indiana. They still overcame that and won. So like, that's not taking anything away from them. I can't stress that enough, but I do still believe.
I can't stress enough how much I want to take something away from Indiana.
I still walk away from this when I say if you keep this core together and you feel like a reasonable you feel like it would be reasonable that if everything broke right for you, you could make that run. Well, that was what this season could have been. I'm looking at New York about to be in the conference finals, and I'm sick to my stomach knowing that we could have beaten New York. And I firmly believe that too. I have no idea who the hell is going to win between the Pacers and Knicks, but I look at this as a missed opportunity for the Cavs. I'm
Probably
sure that's
the Pacers.
part of the reason why everyone's pissed off. Yeah.
Because I think they're gonna wear New York down because they only have 4 playable players. Unfortunately, which is gonna make my take look even stupider. So, but yeah, I think it's one of the things that I think is like, I don't want to get too 92.3 the fan caller mode here, but I do think that there is a Kenny talked about this at length, lacking physical and mental toughness, and I don't know if Jarrett Allen provides either of those. And I think that when you're looking at expendable players who may not be all the way up in those attribute categories, I think that that's one of the reasons why also you would look at trading Jarrett Allen, is to hopefully gain something from that.
Yeah. And I will only push back on that with one thing in saying that I do think Jarrett Allen, first 3 games of the series, was very good. Unfortunately, he has this reputation for what happened in the New York series, and he just hasn't. Like, yeah, he was awesome against the Heat, but they were a G League team at that point. Like I said earlier, the Cavs, the only people who can change the narrative are the Cleveland Cavaliers themselves.
And they can only change it next May.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. Is it's so damn annoying that we're gonna have to wait until next May to even be able to really talk. And listen, I'll be honest with you. If they come out and they win 60 games next year, I'm gonna enjoy it. I know what people are gonna say. Oh, it doesn't mean anything. I'm still gonna enjoy it. All right. Winning a championship is damn hard. All right. Being a sports fan, you just have to enjoy when your team is winning. It's dumb to view this as a, the championship is what you play for, right? But to act like everything is miserable and just completely hate the team and turn on the players after this. I get why you're frustrated. I'm not policing you on how to be a fan, but it's at the same time, like it's going to take a while for us to be able to look back at this regular season with fond memories again because of how it just ended. Honestly, Wendy, when he was on the pod, was kind of dropped an ominous warning when he compared us to the 2009 Cavs, because it's probably going to be remembered similarly, not to the same degree, because I think our collapse was worse than that, but
much worse.
The point being, like, you had this incredible dream regular season that is basically going to be thrown out the window, and it's going to be a while before we're able to look back and be like, man, remember how much fun that 15-0 win streak to start the season was? And we had the dancing frog, and Ty Jerome looked like he was Michael Jordan, and the Cavs just kept on winning games. Like, it sucks that season is now forever going to be stained. The only people you can blame is the players themselves. And sure, there were reasons outside of their control, but there was also a lot of reasons within their control that they dropped the ball. And no matter what happens, it's not going to be erased until they break through the barrier and at least make a conference finals run, if not a finals run.
And I do think that they rightfully earned the label of being soft. They rightfully earned the label of the Knicks series. You can call that a learning experience. Being shoved around by a completely mediocre Orlando Magic team that shot 2.8% from the field and 1% from 3 that whole series, and being pushed to 7 games. I think that's a learning experience. It's one that they came through. But you can point to those as learning experiences. I don't think you can point to this as a learning experience, because the Pacers are not a physical team. They're not a big bruising team. They're the Orlando Magic are a big bruising team. The New York Knicks are a big bruising team. This wasn't that. And if they can do that, then you best believe this version of the Knicks could do that. You best believe that the Celtics could do that, who are also not a big bruising team. So the book is out on how to beat the Cavs, and the book is very clear, what you have to do, and it worked 4 out of 5 times. So in increasing physicality and mental toughness is a very tough thing to do. I don't envy Kenny Atkinson and his staff for needing to do that. But they're just not going to get the benefit of the doubt, and they don't deserve that. Like, we can enjoy the regular season, and I will. I love the regular season. I love covering the games. I love all the stuff. I love talking about it. But I'm going to have to see it before I believe it again. Like, I can't just believe that the Cavs are going to come in with the right mindset, with the right toughness, or with the right mental focus to beat teams that they're better than. Because the Knicks, we talked about this in 2023 at length. The Cavs were a distinctly better team in the regular season and on paper. The Cleveland Cavaliers this year are far and away a better team than this Indiana Pacers team that they just got absolutely wrecked by in 5 games. So we're not going to believe. We have no reason to ever believe in them again, and that's what Donovan Mitchell talked about, and that's what, because he knows it too, and that's one of the things where if the players realize that as well, that's when at a certain point do you trust this group to be mentally strong enough to overcome that at some point in time, or does them understanding that, hey, this is just who we are, like, are they just going to accept that next time like things get tough? Like, if they're next year in the second round, let's say, I don't know, let's say they play, throw me a team, the
Indiana again.
Let's say they play a team like that again. Detroit, yeah, great team. Let's see if they play Detroit again. Isaiah Stewart is going to be trying to fight everybody. JB Bickerstaff is going to be he's going to be jumping up and down on the scorer's table, trying to, he may be doing WWE moves on fans, like, it would turn into an absolute brawl. Why would I think that if you kept the score together, that Cleveland Cavaliers team would say, oh, we're going up against another good team. They're playing us with the game plan that has been shown to work against us. We understand that, and we are going to punch the other team back and be a better basketball team for 7 games. I don't think, there's no reason to believe that unless something changes. If something changes, then you can believe that, and it's whether or not the people in that locker room believe that. Like, do they believe that they can, get punched in the face and keep going? They may say that they can, but do they actually believe that? And that's something that I don't know, and that's something that I think Kobe's going to have to really think about long and hard.
Yeah, and I can't blame anybody for feeling that way, right? Like, I'm repeating myself here, but I want to be clear. I'm not policing the fans for feeling the way that they do and dropping the takes that they do. It's 100% understandable why people are feeling this way about the team, and I get it. Like, I'm just as annoyed and pissed off as you guys are. I have also, the Cavs are going to have to prove it, right? Like, when we get to next year, we'll talk about that, but at the end of the day, whoever it is on this roster is going to have to prove it. And that's what previous championship teams have done, right? You look at basically every single championship team. They didn't get there without taking their lumps. It's something that I repeatedly said in the build-up to this season. Now, granted, I had hoped that the Cavs have already took, a couple lumps that they would have learned from it. Mm-hmm. And here we are running into that wall again. But this is what makes you a champion in this league. You have made the leap to being a 60-plus win team. Now can you overcome adversity and learn from your losses, and fix the things on the margins that are costing you? Because right now they haven't been able to do that. And so I'm interested to see another year of development for Evan Mobley. Hopefully we get a fully healthy Darius Garland. Does Donovan Mitchell continue to buy in, which I expect that he will? What does the supporting cast look like? Are there any moves made on the margins there? It's going to be a really fascinating offseason, even though the Cavs are severely limited with what they can actually do. There's going to be so much work being done that will determine whether or not the Cavs are remembered as a team that overcomes adversity. And, again, maybe they never even win a championship, but do they make a finals? Do they make a conference finals? Or do they really just continue to go out sad and add more fuel to the fire that the regular season doesn't matter, which I think in general is a bad take, but the Cavs have certainly not helped the narrative.
I think that you're fair to point out some of those other championship teams, but it's also worth pointing out, like, let's take Boston, for example. they also did go further before they kept flaming out in like the conference finals. They didn't keep flaming out in the second round or first round. But they also added very distinct skilled players in Jrue Holiday and Derek
Porzingis.
White to help them. And well, I wasn't going to count Porzingis just because he was
Yeah, he
hurt
didn't
for most of the
contribute
finals.
that much. Yeah.
But like they added those guys, and you also think of like the Raptors. I think are a team that was also called not tough. They were also called not mentally strong. Those things were talked about the Raptors repeatedly, and there was a lot of talk. Do Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, do they have overlapping skills? You know, they had a two-man core. So, and they ultimately, obviously, there's not going to be a Kawhi Leonard trade coming around the corner. But, you know,
Sure.
like, maybe. I mean, like, an actual Kawhi Leonard trade could come around the corner, but, like, a Kawhi Leonard 2019
Yeah.
trade. So, that's where it's like they had to go make a big move. And their core was still mostly the same core. So I think that both I think both of our points can actually be true, where like internal growth and then also reconfiguring some of the pieces, but also keeping the core, a lot of the core or the same semblance of the team together is the way to go, not like blow it all up and rebuild.
Yeah, we're completely on the same page there. And last thing that I'll say, and then we should wrap up because it's been a long episode and I still got to do the grades. This is the last thing that I'll say.
Yeah.
Kind of a tangent, but still within the same topic of like where do the Cavs go from here. One thing that I would say, I know we're all feeling super down right now. It feels if you feel like it's doomsday, I completely get it. One thing that I will say, if the Cavs do this right, Evan Mobley is 23 years old. They'll turn 24 in like a month or so. If the Cavs do this right, realistically, you should get two cracks at this. You get one version of the core built around the young Evan Mobley, and in 4 or 5 years from now, you might be able to retool and have an entirely different core around Evan Mobley. If you play your cards right, you could get two cracks at this and be a competitive team for 10 plus years, 10 to 15 years, maybe even. To say Evan Mobley is only scratching the surface is maybe overselling it a little bit. I think he's already an All-NBA player, defensive player of the year.
He scratched the surface,
yeah, he's there, but he could still get even better. He's still only 23. You could have multiple versions of this team that competes. And so maybe, listen, do we ever see another player? Let me rephrase that. Do we see another player as gifted as Donovan Mitchell next to Evan Mobley during his career in Cleveland? I would probably say no. So that means this first iteration of the team is probably more important than whatever we see in the future. But I do just want to say, long term, the Cavs window should still be open as long as Evan Mobley continues to be the guy who he showed us to believe he is this season. I think that's the most important. If you can come away with one positive takeaway from this season, it's that Evan Mobley went from Derek Favors 2.0 to, this is an all-NBA defensive player of the year guy. He is really that dude. Cavs didn't lose because of Evan Mobley. We can make a billion excuses, but I'll tell you right now, you can't point the finger at Evan Mobley. He showed up and did his job.
No.
You could argue maybe he should have got more touches, but Evan Mobley was great in the playoffs too. That's huge. That's the one single shining takeaway you can take from this season is that Evan Mobley's awesome. And then you can say Donovan Mitchell's awesome as well.
Donovan Mitchell's awesome too. Yeah, I'm always going to take away Donovan Mitchell's awesome. I think he's underappreciated for who he is how he's bought into the team, how he's bought into the city. I think that's super underrated what he was able to do. He didn't ask to be traded here, but he really does seem to love Cleveland and he loves the fans. And he plays like he loves the fans. He plays like he loves the city. So I want to also give him a huge shout out on the way out. And also, Darius has taken a massive leap forward and he take another one. We will see. So
yeah,
there's going to be better basketball in Cleveland's future. But this was awful. So no denying that.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And look, I think we should wrap the episode up now, but we have to say thank you to everyone on Playback, on YouTube, on Fear the Sword, Twitter, wherever you were watching us or paying attention to our work. We can't thank you enough. We truly appreciate it. I said on the Playback streams, when we first did those live streams, I wasn't sure if that was going to be a thing that either one of us really like doing, or are we going to do it consistently? Are we going to have 4 people in the chat the entire time? See the way that community grew, both on YouTube and Playback. We are so grateful for it. It really is amazing. We've had so many great connections made through that. And like Cavs season ended in a horrible, sad way, but it was truly the most fun I've ever had covering the Cavs. And all the support that we've gotten from you, from everyone watching, is the main reason for that. So thank you, and we truly appreciate it. We don't take it for granted. Can't say that enough.
And we are still learning through this, just like the Cavs. So we are next year. We hope is going to be even better. We're going to try some new things that we're planning and that we've talked about. So we're hoping to kind of elevate things even more next year, and that's only the reason why we want to elevate things is because of how much support you've given Tony and I on both fearthesword.com and through the YouTube and Playback. So just wanted to say thank you to everybody for following along, and it has been a really fun season.
And I can promise you guys that me and Jackson, no matter what happens in the future, we will never say Cavs in 5 again. We will just never predict Cavs in 5 ever again. It has not gone well.
4, so the Cavs in 5.
Cavs in 4, but then you had to pivot.
I said Cavs in 5 in the Heat series.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? Maybe I missed on that take. Point is, we will try not to jinx.
Yeah, we'll never do that again.
We have blown it twice.
We're not. No, you know what? We didn't jinx anything. We were just idiots for believing in them. That's what it was. So.
All right. Well, it's true. Cavs season's over. Listen, we'll still have content coming out, y'all. We got plenty of things to talk about, but thank you again for everyone who tuned in this season. With all that being said, go Cavs.
I agree. Go Cavs.